Ready to get started?
Give us one more minute, Katie. We'll get connected here, and I think we'll be good to go. You got a dead battery?
Apparently so. Okay. Thank you for that.
And Casey, I do have the statement that Sherry usually reads at the beginning of meetings.
Okay, and you read that?
Yes. Katie, I think we're good to go.
Okay, so I know that there's a statement we need to read about technology before we start the meeting. So do you guys want to read that and get that out of the way?
Yes, I have that, and I will read that. So, welcome to the Human Relations Commission meeting. My name is Scott Wagner. I'm a legal analyst for the City Attorney's Office. And I just want to remind our commission members of a few special meeting guidelines. Commissioners, you must state your name and title each time you speak. All motions will need to be stated clearly. After a motion is made and seconded, the chair, Katie Barnett, will call on the commissioners individually to provide their vote. The chair will then need to announce whether the motion carried and the count of the vote. Various members of city staff are present via Zoom, and they must also state their name and title each time they speak. We didn't have anyone sign up in advance to speak tonight, so I'm not expecting anyone else to join the Zoom call. The chair will then need to call for any in-person public comment for those without access to the technology options. I'm not seeing anyone here at the moment, but I guess I will let you know if someone shows up in person. We'll direct that person to the podium to speak, following social distancing and safety protocols, and I think that's about it. I'll turn it back to you, Katie.
Okay, Katie Barnett, Chair of the Human Relations Commission. I'm going to tick through the agenda here, but might switch some things around. So we have 2 new commissioners. And before we dive into the minutes, I just would like to introduce them, and also if they could just maybe say a little something about themselves. The first new commissioner we have is Amber Sellers. Hi, Amber. Would you like to introduce yourself to the commission?
Sure. Thank you, everyone, and Commissioner Barnett. Again, my name is Amber Sellers. I moved to Lawrence a little under a year. This is my second go around living in Lawrence. I lived here as a student way back more than 10 years ago. But I moved here to be closer to my job in Topeka. I work as a regulation specialist in administration and policy for the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, specifically Bureau of Family and Health. So I work with regulations relating to children and families. So thank you, everyone, for having me.
Commissioner Barnett again, and then we also have Marcus Logan. Do you want to say a little something about yourself, introduce yourself to the commission, Marcus?
Absolutely. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes. What's that?
I'm Marcus Logan. I'm a Lawrence resident. Here. I happen to be a 2019 graduate of Leadership Lawrence. Now on the Leadership Lawrence Advisory Board and co-chair of the Leadership Lawrence Advisory Committee. To hear about this commission and just wanted to see if I could be a part of a change in my community that I live in.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay, so the next agenda item is to approve our minutes from our special meeting that we had on June 11th. And has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? And does anyone have any changes or questions? Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes from June 11th?
Motion to approve. Caleb Stevens, motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Joseph Falls, I'll second.
Okay. Wait, do I need to call the roll, Scott? I'm sorry, I forgot about our technology
yeah.
constraints.
Since we are broadcasting, let's have a call the roll if you wouldn't mind.
Okay. So I have a motion to approve the minutes, a second. Let's call the roll. Katie Barnett, chair, is a yes.
Caleb Stevens, Human Relations Commissioner, here.
Joseph Falls.
Human Relations Commissioner, yes.
Joseph Falls, Vice Chair, yes.
This is Dan Coviello, Commissioner. I also vote yes.
Sarah Blackstone, Commissioner, vote yes.
This is Amber Solers, Human Relations Commissioner. Real quick before my vote, for a point of clarification, when we do roll call votes, will the chair be doing it by name, or is it, since Zoom doesn't really give us organizational structure, is there?
No, that's fine. Yes, I will call the roll.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just for clarity, for understanding, because there's a lot of jumping around, but anywho, my vote is aye.
All right, Commissioner Logan.
Commissioner Logan, I don't know if you can see me or hear me, but I vote yes as well.
Okay, so we have a unanimous approval of the minutes from June 11th, 2020. Moving on, and I want to revisit the minutes later on, but we need to receive our training on the Kansas Open Meetings Act. Who will be conducting that training this evening for us?
That will be me. I'm Maria Garcia, Assistant City Attorney. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, Scott, if that works.
Yep.
Can everyone see that okay? Yes, okay. Well, again, good evening. I'm here to provide this presentation on the Kansas Open Meetings Act. This is information that's provided periodically to the board just to make sure that you all have updated information and so that we can answer any outstanding questions that you might have about this very important law. I'll just start with an open meetings principle. The reason we have this Open Meetings Act is based on the belief that the people have the right to know the public business, and information is essential to the effective functioning of our democratic process. This here is a quote taken directly from the Kansas Open Meetings Act, and it states that in recognition of the fact that a representative government is dependent upon an informed electorate, it is declared to be the policy of this state that meetings for the conduct of governmental affairs and the transaction of governmental business be open to the public. So there are two triggering events. When they both occur, the Kansas Open Meetings Act, or KOMA, will then apply. The first requirement is that the body involved is a covered entity, and secondly, that there be a meeting, and I'll go over what each of those mean. So the first triggering event is that there is a body that's subject to the act. The Kansas Open Meetings Act applies to all legislative and administrative bodies, state agencies, and political and taxing subdivisions that receive or expend and are supported in whole or in part by public funds. And this will include city advisory boards like the Human Relations Commission. The second triggering event is that there's a meeting that's occurring. And there are three things that have to occur in order for a meeting to be deemed occurring. Number one is that there's a gathering of a majority of the members of the body. Two, there is an interactive communication, whether that's in person, by telephone, or any other medium. And there is a discussion of the business or affairs of the body. So when we talk about a majority of membership, for this particular board, there's 9 members of the Human Relations Commission, so a majority of that body will be 5. So the first element for a meeting is for 5 of you all to appear, number 2, and engage in some sort of interactive communication. This clearly applies when members are in the physical presence of each other. It includes telephone calls, including conference calls. It can mean work sessions, staff briefings, video conferencing, online communications, when there is an opportunity for contemporaneous interaction. And the Kansas Attorney General has previously said that interactive communication requires a mutual or reciprocal exchange between members of the body. So it's not that one email is sent to all, by staff member, for example, to all members of the commission, as long as there's no interactive communication in which one member is responding and there's back and forth between the members, there's no interactive communication, and that's fine. So as long as it's one way, it's not interactive. And then the third element of a meeting is that there's discussion of the business of the body. Discussion is really what triggers this element. It's not necessary for there to be binding action or a vote. Just merely talking about business of the body will count under this section. Social gatherings are not per se subject to KOMA if there's no discussion of the body. And so commissioners can gather together outside of these meetings in mutual places as long as they're not talking about things that the commission has before it or that are likely to come before it. Conferences may be attended by board members as well, where items of general interest are discussed, as long as specific business of the body is not discussed by a majority of the Human Relations Commission. As far as electronic communications are concerned, the Kansas Attorney General has indicated that the mere fact that a communication is electronic does not raise a KOMA issue. So again, the one-way email is fine. But if a majority of the body uses an electronic communication to engage in interactive discussions, such contact may raise a KOMA issue. A single email sent to other members would likely not be considered a violation, but participation in an online chat room, for example, or instant messaging may certainly give rise to a meeting here. So for email specifically, we would recommend avoiding initiating online discussions with fellow advisory board members through email. You might receive emails about a city matter in which the advisory board members are also sent or copied. Please avoid the reply all function. If something is sent from staff to the entire board, you would just hit reply rather than reply all so that the entire board doesn't see your correspondence. There is something called serial meetings under the Kansas Open Meetings Act, and that is a series of interactive communications of less than a majority, and that's not permitted by KOMA. So that means that you have less than a majority that's meeting and discussing business of the body, but that information is shared and passed along to another less than majority group, and so collectively it means that a majority has received that message, has interacted somehow. The Kansas Attorney General has given a few examples of serial meetings that can include a phone tree, as was described, in which maybe 2 or 3 members are on a telephone conference, they discuss something, and then a 4th member will call all of those 2 or 3 people to survey them or get their opinion or talk to them about what had been discussed on the previous call. So the 4th member was not included, or maybe the 5th person in your example are on this board, but collectively it did comprise of the majority of the board. Another example is where there might be 2 or 3 groups of less than a majority that have gathered somewhere independently, and there is a staff person or someone else that is jumping between those meetings and sharing with one group what another group was discussing and what they decided. So now that information has been shared to this smaller group. Collectively now we have a majority of the board that is engaging in an interactive communication. So be aware and wary of those, because if there is a serial meeting, it triggers KOMA, and all of the requirements of KOMA are then going to be necessary. So just to review, KOMA applies when, number one, the body involved is a covered entity, and two, there is a meeting, which means the majority of the membership of the body, in your case 5, an interactive communication, and finally, members discuss the business of the body. All meetings of entities covered by KOMA must be open to the public, and proper notice must be given. Meetings are required under the law to be held in places accessible to the general public, where the public can either hear or see the meeting. Meetings must be conducted so that the public, I guess that's exactly what I just said, may observe or listen to the proceedings. Notice of the date and time and place of any regular or special meeting must be given to any person requesting such notice. KOMA does not require notice to be given within a particular time frame, so it doesn't say that it has to be within 48 hours, for example. It's just open-ended. But notice does need to be requested by a person before it is provided by that public entity. And then similarly for agendas, KOMA does not require an agenda to be created, and a person would have to ask for a copy of the agenda before it's required to be provided. The City of Lawrence generally provides its agendas on its website, which is not required by KOMA, but any other person would have to request it if it weren't posted to the website already. If the body does create one, like Lawrence does, it should include the topics planned for discussion, and then those agendas can, of course, be amended leading up to the actual meeting. The Kansas Open Meetings Act provides for something called executive sessions. Those are closed meetings, or meetings that are closed to the public. So a majority of the board could meet behind closed doors to discuss topics that are allowed by statute. The topics that are allowed are very narrow, and so we would ask that any request to have an executive session be, the city attorney's office be consulted before that happens. So do not have an executive session without first having that approved by the city attorney's office. Certain procedures do need to be followed, and only certain topics can be discussed. KOMA finally has some language about the penalties that can happen if somebody violates the law. The Attorney General or the District Attorney is tasked with investigating potential KOMA violations. The Attorney General has stated that his office seeks compliance with the Act, and his office wants to assure future violations do not occur. They may require the body to receive additional KOMA training, among other things that I'll mention. The Attorney General can determine by a preponderance of the evidence whether a KOMA violation has occurred, and if a violation is found, the Attorney General can enter into a consent order with the entity or the person, and may apply to a district court to enforce that consent order. Consent order is basically an agreement between the two parties, the Attorney General or the district attorney, with the violating entity, that lists out what the entity agrees to do because of that violation. The consent order can, by law, impose a civil penalty of up to $250 per violation. It can require additional training on open meetings. The district court action can impose court costs, investigative, and attorney fees if the Attorney General must enforce compliance through the district court. And the Attorney General may also enter into a consent judgment with a violator, which may contain any remedy available to the court. And then, in addition, if there's a violation, there could be an invalidation of action. So if a board voted on something when there wasn't in violation of KOMA, for example, then that vote would be invalidated. And then finally, a person who has committed personally a violation of KOMA could be removed from office, which is called ouster or recall. And with that, I'll be happy to stand for any questions. If you don't have any questions right now, but you think of one after this presentation, please feel free to contact the staff liaison, which is Casey or Scott. You can also contact the city attorney's office at the number provided. And we do want to thank you very much for your attention to this law.
Katie Barnett, Chair of the Commission. Thank you so much, Maria. Thank you, staff, for putting this together. I just want to ask one more time, does anyone have any questions before we move on to the next agenda item? Okay, seeing none, we will receive a presentation now from the City Communication Department. Is that Porter, or is someone else here to do that presentation for us?
That'd be me. I'm Maureen Brady, marketing specialist, and I work with Porter, so he's out this week, so I'm your substitute communications person, and I will share my screen. Okay, so this is meant to be just a brief overview of external communications, which is basically how we as the city strive to communicate with all the different community members we have here in Lawrence. I believe at your meeting last month, there was some discussion about what you all could do to better communicate about Human Relations Commission and what you all do. And that's something that I believe is on the schedule for August when Porter is back in the office. He'll be here to talk to you a little bit more about that. In addition to being the Director of Communications and Creative Resources, he is a staff liaison for several different boards at the city. And he's worked with them before on different communications goals and kind of how they can accomplish what they want to do in order to communicate to our community about what they're up to. So he'll be able to kind of work with you a little bit more on what your goals are. So this is meant kind of as a setup for that, very informational, so you can be aware of different tools and resources we have at the city that help us communicate to our external audiences, which is basically the entire community. So first of all, who we are, the Communications and Creative Resources Office. We are located within the City Manager's office, and we're made up of 4 people. We have Porter Arneal, our Director of Communications and Creative Resources. Kevin Powell is our website manager. Kurt Henning does our video broadcasts. And then myself, Maureen Brady, I'm the marketing specialist. So it's the 4 of us in our office, but then in addition to us 4, we have different marketing and communications people who work throughout the city in different departments. We have people in Parks and Rec, we have people in MSO. So there's many more people in the city who are doing external communications as well, but the 4 of us are the people who make up that specific CCR office. So what we do, a brief overview of some of the primary functions of our office. So we produce The Flame, which is our monthly newsletter. It goes out to everybody who gets mailed a print copy of their City of Lawrence utility bill. And then it also, in addition to The Flame, which is a front and back newsletter, there's an option for utility bill inserts, which is an extra slip of paper with some additional information. We don't use those too often because they cost a little bit extra, but we do have them available. In addition to the print Flame, we're currently working on an online version of The Flame so that it's a little more accessible for those people who do not get a mailed copy of their print utility bill. And so that there's a way for them to read all that content in a more exciting way. So hopefully that'll launch in August, pending some technical difficulties. We also oversee content and technical administration of the city website. We oversee organizational communications tools, including social media and MailChimp email distribution. We coordinate, write, and distribute news releases. We'll oversee content and technical administration of Cable Channel 25. We oversee content of Lawrence Listen surveys. So that's kind of our feedback platform. If there are different initiatives or things going on in the city that departments or groups want to hear back from the community what they think on, we can set up a survey on that platform and get some feedback. It can be very successful, especially if it's a very hot button issue people are interested in. For example, in the temporary downtown business reconfiguration that we just did, I think we had more than 600 responses to that survey because people were very passionate about that. And so we also organize special events as needed. We'll produce live city board and commission meeting broadcasts like this one. And then we'll also develop graphics and print materials as needed. Generally, those go along with a larger communications campaign or social media posts, so they fit in with those goals. So communications tools, this mimics a little bit the previous slide in terms of information, but we thought it was helpful because it's a flyer. When we print it, it's 8.5 by 11, but we generated it for city staff so that everybody can understand the different tools that we have to work with in our office. And if they have something they want to communicate, we like to share this as an overview of the options we have at our disposal as far as getting out to people and getting the word out about it. So it just goes into a little bit more detail about those different external communications options. The ones that are most relevant probably for you all are the ones in that first audience section, which is residents or businesses. And it just kind of spells out all those different options. We also have some for specific audiences, whether those are businesses only or city commission only. And then internal communications would be communications just to city staff. And then to the right is a yellow box, which has our list of all the different emails that we can contact to let people know about city news. So that city news email is the primary one we use for news releases and things. And then we also have different lists for every board and commission. So my next two slides, which are my last two, I'm just going to go into a little bit more detail about our website and then our social media. So our website includes a main page, as well as department main pages and then support pages for those department pages. I believe on your last meeting in June, there's a question about whether you could get the Human Relations Division as one of those web page main sliders. And so we went ahead and added that. So that's just a screenshot from our current web page homepage. And we use those sliders as our way of putting whatever is most relevant or timely or we think might be driving a lot of interest from the community. So we obviously have COVID up there still. Our compost facility recently reopened, so that's a big deal. And then the fourth one is a link to watch live commission meeting broadcasts like this one. And then in addition to the main page and department web pages, we have resource web pages, which are resources primarily for community members. So that's where we'll have Lawrence Listen surveys. We'll do different maps, city calendar, and then city contacts. We also have informational web pages, which spring up as different needs to share information arise. So for example, back in March, we created a COVID-19 informational web page. We have our 2020 strategic plan informational web page, et cetera, et cetera. They come up often depending on what kind of initiatives different people at the city are working on. And so then we also have forums, which again are a resource for community members primarily. Forms can include permits, open records, code violation, and more. And then of importance primarily to city staff probably, we have our city design guidelines and logos at the lawrenceks.org/brand page. And then for social media, the city has quite a few different pages, I believe more than a dozen on Facebook and several on Twitter. And those are primarily represented or run by different staff members, depending on what the page is for. So for example, Lawrence Parks and Recreation Department has their own page and that's run by their marketing person. Lawrence Recycles is run by someone in our sanitation department. But the two primary ones for the City of Lawrence itself are our at City of Lawrence Facebook page, which has about 12,000 followers, our at Lawrence, Kansas Twitter page, which has about 16.8 thousand followers. And then also within the past year, we've joined Nextdoor, which I believe we have somewhere north of 15,000 households. Households is just how they list people on Nextdoor because you have to verify your address to be on it. So 15,000 Lawrence households follow us on there. And then we're also on LinkedIn. And so I highlighted these pages, the primary city pages, just because when we communicate about things related to Human Relations Commission, it's primarily through these pages. They have our broadest audience, our widest audience, so they reach the most people. And it's where we put most of the city news, unless it's very niche specific to some of those different departments. So I included a couple screen grabs of things we've done so far this summer. So following the Human Relations Commission meeting last month, we did a recap post about it, encouraging people to watch it on our YouTube page where they're all posted after the live broadcast. And then we also encourage people to subscribe to email notifications so that they can be notified of future meetings and agendas. I'm hoping that'll help garner some more interest in it. And then we also post about things that, are relevant to our society and our city, and also probably tie into Human Relations Commission. So an example of that would be when we shared the mayor's Juneteenth proclamation. We also recently, I believe on Sunday, did something for the Americans with Disability Act 30th anniversary. So we do a lot of varied things on those primary city pages, try to connect to everyone in the city in some way. And that is the end of my overview. So I'm available for any questions or not.
Katie Barnett, Chair of the Commission. Thank you, Maureen, so much for your time this evening. We did talk a lot about how we can reach our community. At the last meeting, it is really the crux of why we want to meet pretty regularly from now on. So I do really appreciate the information you provided this evening. Thanks. The one question I have is what kind of data are you collecting on how people are best reached, or how we're reaching people? How many hits are on those various social media platforms? How many people get the utility bill? How many people have opted for online? I mean, I'm sure you have that. I just wonder if perhaps we could have that to better inform our decisions on methods of communication with the public to really target what we think is going to be most effective.
Yeah, Maureen Brady, marketing specialist. We do monitor all that, and we capture it. So especially with all of our online and digital communications, it's very easy to track those numbers, whether it's how many people are opening, the email and MailChimp, sending out the agenda notification, or whether it's how many people have seen the specific Facebook post. For Facebook and Twitter specifically, we'll do monthly reports, which kind of give an overview of our averages for the month and what we expect to see, and then some of our really high performing content and kind of what the most we expect to see is. So we can definitely pull some of those numbers if you're interested in them, and they might be relevant for your next meeting. And then I know for our Flame, we have the numbers on how many people get the monthly utility bill. And I want to say it's north of 12,000 people, but I could be a little off there. So we will get you the actual numbers.
Great, thank you. Do any other commissioners have any questions? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item. So we're going to receive did someone say something? No? Okay. We're going to receive an update on the issues and tasks related to equity and inclusion by the city, and this city staff, in particular the city commission. So there were some links in the agenda. We were just talking briefly that the link to the immigration report from July 21st, the link is bad. So I believe staff is going to send out a different link or the document itself so we can review it or just hit on a few things. So we have 3 reports that we're going to receive: the equity tools from the July 28th meeting, the issues and tasks from the July 28th commission meeting, and then again, we can discuss however we're able to the immigration report. Staff?
So this is Casey Toomey, Assistant City Manager, and Chair Barnett. I just wanted to take a minute and introduce myself and fill everybody in that I will be taking over as the staff liaison in an interim capacity. I'm serving right now as an interim equity and inclusion director while the city's searching for someone to fill that position permanently. And when that happens, that person will most likely be filling in or taking over serving as the liaison to the board. So For the purposes of tonight, I'll be serving in that role, so I wanted to make sure to introduce myself to all of you. I know some of you, but not all of you. So just a little bit about me. I have been in the position of Assistant City Manager here with the city since 2014, and prior to that, I served in a number of years in different roles with the city, but the majority as the budget manager for the city. So been here a total of almost 17 years, but just wanted to let you all know. I am married. My partner and I have a daughter who is a 12 going on 25, and so just a little bit about me. So look forward to getting to know all of you and working with the group. As far as our updates tonight, we did want to just make sure to give you a little bit of an update. And since we had presented these items to the City Commission just this week, we thought that would be a good opportunity to provide you with similar information. Due to the these items were actually part of our city manager's report on the 21st, but given the late hour of that meeting, we weren't able to get to them. So you can find links to them on both this commission agenda from the 21st of July and the 28th. So just quickly on the equity tools, we wanted to make sure that the City Commission was aware of some of those tools. One of them, or two of them, are related to the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. You may recall that I spent time with your board previously walking you all through some of the GARE tools, including their Racial Equity Toolkit and their member portal. But we wanted to make sure that the City Commission and the public were aware of those tools. So we went ahead and provided links to those and updated the City Commission. I did want to illustrate how we're starting to use tools like those by talking a little bit about the work of our COVID-19 coordinated recovery team. So a number of agencies throughout the community have established a coordinated recovery team. Agencies like the city, the county, KU, USD 497, Haskell, Lawrence Public Health Department, lots of different agencies have banded together to try to be as coordinated as possible as we look at how our community is going to be recovering from COVID-19. Part of that team is a group of equity impact advisors, and that group of equity impact advisors got together and used the GARE toolkit to create a more streamlined version of a toolkit that that coordinated recovery team could use as they look at all of the proposals that the community is submitting to the county for the $25 million worth of CARES Act funding that is being made available. So a good illustration of how a toolkit like that can create a process that's standardized across the different, they're called RSFs in that group. They're kind of branches aimed at looking at economic development, public health, housing and human services, and education. But so that tool asks some questions that we pull directly from that GARE toolkit to help them determine how to prioritize those funds in order to provide information to the county that they can use to make those funding decisions. The other item that we updated the City Commission on that I thought might be useful for your group is called a Municipal Action Guide, and it was created by the National League of Cities. Like the GARE toolkit, it provides a number of different steps that you can go through, and this one's tailored more towards leaders, community leaders. So I thought it might be useful for you all to, if you have time, to pull that toolkit up and read, or excuse me, that action guide, to pull that link up and take some time reading through that to see if that can help you all in the work that you all are starting to be a little more intentional about. So that's it in terms of the toolkit. The next item on the agenda is, let's see how it's worded, was updating on the issues and tasks from the July 28th City Commission meeting. Again, this item was a follow-up from conversations the commission had back in July. And there were 12 items that the commission had discussed and provided some direction to staff on. It's a lengthy report, and I'm happy to walk through it. I did not prepare the report. My colleague, Brandon McGuire, did. And we could have him come if that would interest the board, or I can just walk you through. I would say each item, there's a tracking sheet that's been created. Each item has a description of the task, some additional discussion that has occurred since the City Commission talked about these items, a timeline, a progress update, and some status information. So our plan is to continue to update this document and share it with the public to help everyone keep track of how we're making progress or where these items are going. Part of that update is a reference to an RFP that the city recently advertised for a comprehensive study of the Lawrence Police Department. A number of the items that came up on that task list, items such as, establishing a mental health and addiction crisis response team, some work dealing with mental health and homeless issues in the community, are items that we feel are going to be encompassed in the scope of work that's going to be part of the work of that consultant that we select through that RFP process. So there's also a link in that update to that RFP so that you all can read that scope of work and see the work that we expect to be done related to the police department. So I think I will stop there, and I hope Maria is still on the call, and maybe she would be able to offer us an update on the immigration report, as I believe she is the one who prepared that information.
Thank you for that, Casey. Again, I'm Maria Garcia, Assistant City Attorney. At its July 21st, 2020 meeting, the City Commission considered and adopted on first reading Ordinance 976 regarding the provision of city services. It is a multiple-page document, but the gist of it, generally, it provides for fair and equal provision of city services to all people, regardless of their immigration status. The document sets out various city departments and rules that are specific to each. For example, there's a section on Parks and Rec, Municipal Court, and the Police Department. At its meeting on July 21st, the City Commission adopted on first reading the ordinance as written, with one exception, and that was for staff to continue working with Sanctuary Alliance about some recommended language that the Alliance wanted included under the police department section of the policy. To summarize, the Alliance proposed some language in the ordinance that would create requirements for the police department's policy on interacting with immigrants. And so the commission directed staff to work with Sanctuary Alliance to refine that language and to provide a revised draft for the commission to consider on second reading. We don't have a date set yet for that second reading, but it is a priority for staff, and we are already in touch with representatives from Sanctuary Alliance to work on revising that language. And so I anticipate it will be on an upcoming agenda in the near future, but I don't quite have a date for that yet.
Katie Barnett, Chair of the Commission. Thank you so much, Maria, for that brief update. I appreciate it. And Casey, thank you so much for giving us an overview of kind of where we are or where the city is in, providing more information and resources to increase our inclusiveness. So I do have a question, though, about the issues and tasks document. Task 4 mentions the Human Relations Commission is, like a pretty generic reference. But then Task 6 discusses engaging with communities and seeking experiences for the review. But then it doesn't say, is that specific to police policy, or is that...
This is Casey Toomey. Chair Barnett, are you speaking about task number 6 or task number 4?
Subsection 2 of task number 6. I feel like that is in line with what we are, we discussed at the last meeting. And so I just want to make sure that I have a clear understanding that that is more related to ending discrimination generally, and that's very specific to the police policy.
I would have to pull up the Obama Foundation's Mayor's Challenge, but I believe that those words are pulled directly from that pledge. So, and I, again, might lean on Attorney Garcia, because I believe she helped review this material, but I believe it is mainly focused on policing. Is that correct, Maria?
I would agree with that, yes.
Okay, Katie Barnett, Chair of the Commission. So is there, I don't see really any specific, I was under the impression that the mayor gave us some pretty specific instructions at the earlier meeting, and then those instructions were really refined in this issues and tasks document. But then I don't see anything in the issues and tasks document specific to the Human Relations Commission. Everything is just kind of weird mentioned. So can someone help me understand how this document relates to what we are to be doing and what we're charged with, so I make sure that we are accomplishing the requests and everything that are set out for us?
Casey Toomey, Assistant City Manager. I'll take a shot. I would say that I think that the specific direction on this task list that relates to you all was task number 4, as you mentioned, about listening and engaging, the engagement public forums. I think that was the specific task that came out of this group that was involving you all. I think it was the Human Relations Commission and the Community Police Review Board. So I think that's the specific task. I think why we wanted to provide you with the update was just because it's sort of indirectly related to the work that you all are doing, just because it's kind of a clearinghouse of all of our current efforts and activities related to advancing equity. Is that helpful?
Commissioner Barnett here. Yes, that's helpful. Thank you so much.
This is Commissioner Dan Coviello. A follow-up to Katie's question. First of all, nice to see you again, Katie, and hear from some of the experiences that at least the COVID team has had in using GARE. I maybe in a follow-up meeting would be interested to hear your experience using the document. You referenced a streamlined version that you found to be helpful. And so that leads into my question, is in that in a prior meeting, it was indicated that we're going to be or should be using the GARE toolkit to then assess city ordinances that may disproportionately being affecting people within our community. And what task number 4 reads at present is that we won't be acting in that way, and just clarifying, it'll simply be using our forum for conversations. At present, it looks like we won't be using the GARE toolkit to take any action right now, aside from having meetings to talk about important issues. An important thing in and of itself, but simplifying my question, sorry for the length, will we be using the GARE toolkit to review city ordinances or not?
Assistant City Manager Casey Toomey, thank you for that question. I think the use of the toolkit is up to the board. I think the mayor came and visited with you all and encouraged you to consider using a tool like that. But I think she left it up to the board to decide if that tool was appropriate. So to kind of your follow-up piece, There is a link to the streamlined version of the tool that the Equity Impact Advisor team put together. There's lots of other tools out there as well that we could pull from any number of different sources. So it may be, if I may, a suggestion could be that we continue to provide the board with examples of tools, and then have an agenda item on a future meeting where you all look at those tools and have a conversation about which one you think fits. I would say from our experience on the Equity Impact Advisor team that the toolkit is important, but so is the kind of the journey to choose the toolkit. You don't want to just apply a one-size-fits-all tool. So you may want to spend some time adjusting the questions or rephrasing them, or finding more direct ways of trying to get the information that you're looking for. So that would be one suggested way to move forward.
Commissioner Dan Coviello, thank you for the clarification and the guidance, and forgive me for not looking through that shortened version that you...
Oh, no, that's okay. It was a lot of links.
Commissioner Barnett here. So I guess since we're talking about our work with the Community Police Board, they had a meeting a couple weeks ago, and I think there were maybe one or two of us commissioners who were in attendance of that meeting, and I just wondered if perhaps Commissioner Bloxham could give an overview of how that went. And then the other thing I wanted to add is I have been in touch with Tanya, who is the chair of that board. And timing-wise, if we wanted to start working on this community engagement approach with the Community Police Board, it's really important that we give them just a second to kind of revise their bylaws, she said, because they're working on kind of a renewed approach to their board. And so she suggested we revisit this maybe in September. So I didn't want this to go unaddressed, but also I want to be sure that everyone understands that we probably won't do anything with them until they kind of get refocused. So Commissioner Bloxham, do you have just a quick update on how that meeting went?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Sarah Bloxham. I, because of just our last meeting, and we had actually talked about, actually asked City Attorney Wheeler if we could do a joint commission meeting. They were speaking, I mean, it went it was just real slow as far as, again, going back to their bylaws and what they were able to do. They really, as we know, they're a really new committee. So there wasn't a whole bunch of meat and potatoes. It was actually going through and just setting they're revisiting their bylaws, seeing if they had the ability to do what the mayor was asking them to do. Kind of like what we did, I think it was like 3 meetings ago. So just reviewing our own bylaws and seeing if we wanted to change the frequency of meetings. I did chime in and state that we had spoken as a committee and we were interested in partnering with them on upcoming meetings. She said that she would be in touch with Katie. It looks like she was. And I'm really looking forward to our 2 commissions getting together. What I'm really not hearing, and what is very important to me and is very specific in task number 4, is providing an opportunity for the community to engage. And we're really not coming to any fruition on that. Would it be your understanding, Commissioner Barnett, that we are waiting for them to tell us when these forums are going to be? Should we come up with some kind of way to engage the community and then include them? I'm worried that if we just continue to wait for the other team to invite us to the party, we're not going to get much done. So looking at this task number 4, I feel like because we are a more established committee, and we have actually had those platforms in our community. We've hosted lots of things before. Would anyone be in agreement that that would be appropriate for us to kind of start planning? And do we need to use these tools to plan? Because I'm looking through these tools and there is nothing on necessary planning community forums unless I missed it completely. There's nothing on there. So I just feel kind of a sense of urgency to kind of jump on this and then go to them with what we have. Because their hands are really full, like Commissioner Barnett said, of just getting their bylaws in order, because they're not getting any complaints because they're being blocked by several different entities. So just by the way they were set up to do what they were doing. So I hope that's making sense, but where I'm going is we've been given some action items, and while I am really, really interested in partnering with that committee, I want to go with some meat and potatoes for them to kind of mull over and see if they can be part of that with wherever they are in September.
Commissioners, if I may, this is Assistant City Manager Casey Toomey again, and draw your attention to task number 7, that is plan and conduct a listening session with the City Commission and community members. I think staff's conversation around that task item is kind of what I'm hearing you describe, Commissioner Buxom, that it would provide an opportunity for some facilitated listening, some facilitated community engagement activity and discussion. A subgroup of staff is working on finding a facilitator that could help provide that. I agree with you about the sense of urgency and the importance of hearing community voices as we have these kinds of conversations. So I'm not sure if that helps you, but I think, again, if I may, a suggestion could be that that community listening and community engagement forum, certainly you all would be invited to attend. It might even be a co-host opportunity for all of the boards that you're talking about, you, the Police Review Board, City Commission, and maybe even opportunities for other community partners to co-host an event such as that.
Commissioner Barnett, this is Amber Sellers, Commissioner Amber Sellers, so getting used to that. Quickly, I wanted to add a couple of points just in reviewing the task tabs and to provide maybe a little bit more context to the conversation. I read task 4 as our relationship or a collaboration with the CPRB in regards to community policing. So whether or not that the GARE tool is used to guide those discussions and engagement with the community is one thing to consider. And I'm assuming it's pertaining to the 8 Can't Wait campaign 0, which are synonymous with each other. If the city, and if that's what the CPRB is wanting to move forward with and guide discussions using the 8 Can't Wait campaign, that is your tool that you would use to facilitate those conversations with the community. If you're familiar with the 8 Can't Wait pillars, then you'll know that not all the pillars are policing focused. There are pieces that talk about pay wages, housing, and so that brings in other commissions and boards that are part of the city as well. So while I feel like task 4 speaks to the policing piece and our involvement in the policing piece, if we using the 8 Can't Wait model to guide those discussions, I think there's opportunities for the commission to do additional engagement with the community, as was discussed in task 7. But for me, I'm wanting to know what is the direction the commission wants to take. Are we having community meetings to do sense making? And if so, what are we making sense of? So again, I've shared this before that I know that people are antsy and people want to see something. But if we don't know how we're going to engage and facilitate, then how do we expect to have a productive community engagement? So I'm hearing a lot, and I don't know if it's maybe people aren't comfortable with what tool, model we're wanting to use to gauge those conversations, if we're waiting for a facilitator to come in and help us digest that question and then create some type of outline that we can use it within our, when we start doing community engagement. But I'm not really hearing from commissioners what exactly you're wanting these community engagement opportunities to yield. What are we wanting to yield? What are we wanting to discuss? Because if we have CPRB doing community policing, then that's great. So does that mean it's an opportunity for us to join with the housing board to do some sense making and community listening on affordable housing? Has that been done? Do we need to look at it from what perspective of housing and racial equity are we looking at? What 2 points are we intersecting that we're wanting to have discussions about? Instead of just saying we need to have discussions. I'm not hearing the objective or the goal. I'm hearing the need, and the need is there, and the need needs to be addressed, but what is the goal of said meetings? You want me to gather 20 people from the community to encourage them to come and speak to us, but what is it that we're wanting them to speak of?
This is Commissioner Bloxham to answer that. Thank you, Commissioner Sellers. I mean, you just kind of hit it right on the head. And thank you for pointing out those points. I think I'm getting to the level of frustration because we keep talking about forums, but no one has ever provided any kind of guidance to first say that we're going to have them, right? I mean, at first, we need to know that we can have them and how we're going to do them. And so once we get to that, we know that this is going to happen, then I think it's appropriate. Now I understand why they're saying to use these toolkits, and thank you for that explanation, because that's helpful to me. But I don't even think we've crossed the bridge to, are we going to have them? Can we have them? Are they going to be a true forum where we're actually going to hear from the public? And like what does that entail? So I don't feel like I've gotten any clarity as far as we're going to even have these forums, because we got some pushback on other forums before, and we haven't even crossed step one that we're going to even engage in those. So that's kind of where my question is coming from. And absolutely, Commissioner Sellers, knowing what we're going to talk about would be the next important step too. So I appreciate these toolkits. I'm not really hearing from, I thought that's what we were going to be hearing about tonight from the communications department. And I don't know where this is all taking us. So I'm going to stop there and I don't know where I am on this.
Commissioner Barnett here. So I just want to kind of reconcile two different discussions. The first one was when we had the special meeting on June 11th, we had this really broad discussion about how our commission can address really what's going on in our community today. And so we thought maybe, why don't we create, like, if you look at page 3 of the minutes, we thought maybe we could all create a layout of the intersection of the social service agencies that we would work with or that we could communicate with in informing our next steps to address some of the issues that are going on. Concurrent with that, the city commission, our elected officials, have decided for us, for our commission, to have these community meetings. And everything laid out in those 2 documents are from the city commission, not anything that we participated in. There's nothing there for us to decide on what to do. Those were directions by city commission and city staff to our commission that we're receiving really for the first time. And so I don't know what the next step should be. If we had this discussion on June 11th, the city also has had a discussion on what they want us to do. Now, how do we reconcile coming together and achieving the goals given to us by the city commission while also working on, really what we discussed? Are we going to use the city commission's instruction as a guidepost to furthering what we were intending on doing? Or do we want to do something in addition to what the city has requested we do with these community engagement meetings and working with the community police board? So I just want to clarify that, that was done without really, we're kind of discussing that community engagement piece really for the first time here this evening. So with that, why don't we discuss it? What is the intended goal? And I guess my question maybe to staff, are we in charge of coming up with the goals as Commissioner Sellers said, or is it the city that's interested in coming up with what the end goal is of these community discussions? Who's in charge of that, or is it collaborative?
This is Assistant City Manager Casey Toomey. Chair Barnett, good question. As far as reconciling the two items, what you all as a commission wanted to do and what the city commission has kind of directed will happen. I think I would say that the offer was to be collaborative, and I am hearing from you that collaborative doesn't feel collaborative when you're brought in on step 4 of 5 steps. So maybe some feedback that we can provide to the city commission about what you all think the goals of those forums or listening sessions would be helpful to provide, so that the commission can incorporate that into the conversations that we as staff are having about, our thought was a facilitator who is used to working with folks to have some courageous conversations about race, or some conversations that might be difficult and uncomfortable for some people. Having facilitators who are trained to do that will be much more respectful to all people involved, and I think more productive. So that's kind of what staff's recommendation was. But certainly, I think if you all have thoughts about the goals, I do see the confusion that if you all as a board want to say, okay, one set of listening session or forums is adequate, that's sort of different maybe when you talk about what the goal or the outcome is that you're after, than if you all as a board say, okay, city commission, yeah, we can have this collaborative thing, but we too as a board want to have our own. And maybe that is what I'm hearing from you all, and that's fine. And maybe then there's 2 different goals for those 2 different opportunities or forums. Am I synthesizing what you all are hearing and saying and thinking?
Commissioner Barnett, yes, that's really helpful for me, at least. I think I would like to take the opportunity to discuss right now just what we're required to do by the city with these community engagement sessions, and maybe open it up for commissioners to offer suggestions for the outcomes we would like to see from those community discussions. And then we can maybe move on to something else, because I think that we had a lot of other ideas that we want to do outside of community engagement forums, community outreach, that we discussed last time, that we can do on our own. I mean, not on our own, because we certainly need city staff support, but other ways that we can engage the community. And also, listening sessions and community engagement right now seems next to impossible. And it seems like it's not going to be that, my opinion, is I don't know that we're really going to get what we need from these listening sessions or community engagement at this time. And so then, is the goal to just check a box, or is it to truly hear from our community and understand what's going on so we can be effective? So I just would like to hear from each, if the commissioners have ideas, perhaps staff can take notes and see how we can deal with this, these engagement sessions and what outcomes we'd like to see.
Real quickly, this is Commissioner Sellers. I'm curious to know how many of the commissioners are familiar with whether it's the 8 Can't Wait or any other models or reports that deal with structural racism, policing, things of that nature, whether it's the Urban League's 2019 report on the status of Black America, in NAACP's report. I stick with the 8 Can't Wait because that's what's strongly urged per the commission's report. But is everyone on the commission familiar with it and understand the different pillars of it and understand that there's pieces of it that are not strictly about policing?
Commissioner Barnett here. I'll say that I'm somewhat superficially familiar with it. I've reviewed the pillars, but I certainly have not taken a deep dive into it and understood it in a really comprehensive way. I think that a lot of us were expecting the Community Police Advisory Board to help us understand it and help us understand what they're doing, so we can lend whatever expertise our board or support our board would have. But yeah, I mean, I've been on the website like a month and a half ago, and but that's it. I don't know a lot about it.
This is Commissioner Sellers again. So that's one of my concerns, is that this is a tool that's been shared that the commission is not very knowledgeable of. And I think there's some opportunities to become knowledgeable with it and understand the different subgroups of each pillar. And from there, we can understand how we would want what that community engagement looks like. As I stated, one of the main points under it is paying a living wage. So while that may not have a direct impact to policing, it is something that we could use to drive conversations and sense-making exercises with the community, whatever that may look like. And that work then intersects with other boards as well as with the CPRB. So I guess, as from how I see it, there's opportunities for us to, we have a very broad base to work from, in that the work we do will depend on us possibly collaborating with other boards and commissions to do sense making, to have those conversations with the community about understanding how does institutional racism play a part in business practices, and how businesses, how minority business owners see Lawrence as a viable place to have a very successful business. Families, any Black, Indigenous, or person of colors, do they see Lawrence as a place to raise a family? And does the housing market articulate that? Banking practices, health practices, education. I do believe Commissioner Coviello talked about that in the last meeting, breaking this down and chunking it down and recognizing the different pieces that make up these pieces of addressing racial equity in our community, and how we can break those pieces down, collaborate with other boards and commissions to actually get the work done. I don't think it's a task that is solely depending on us to do. I think we are the common denominator in all of the boards and with all of this work. And it's just a way that we can break it down and partner with other commissions to do this type of work, make sense making, however it may look like, to engage the community about it. Whether it's talking with minority business owners, whether it's talking with healthcare communities and educators, parents, frontline essential staff workers, or however we do it to tackle these different pieces as it pertains to livable wages, healthcare, policing, education, and housing affordability. So I don't think the onus is just on us to do all the work. It's how do we break this down, figure out who our partners is, who the partners are in doing this work, and then going at it from there.
Okay, Commissioner Sellers, thank you so much. I appreciate that approach. I think that's good. You know, we talked about identifying potential partners. Sorry, Commissioner Barnett here. We talked about identifying potential partners in our outreach. And so it seems like that is a task we need to hop to here before our next meeting. So I guess maybe I see the community engagement sessions requested by the city as something that we will certainly have. It sounds like staff is already coordinating that, and when we get more instruction from staff, we will abide by or encourage attendance or whatever it is we're tasked with doing, participation in that meeting. But we really maybe need to, we have some tasks we want to focus on, and so we will participate in what the city is doing and requested us to do, but let's go ahead and try and focus on some things that we can do in the community. And it seems like the first step, as Commissioner Sellers identified, is to work on figuring out who our community partners are. So let's have that maybe for the next agenda item. The commissioners, I don't know that we really need to vote on this. Let's go ahead and review our toolkits like the 8 Can't Wait campaign, and ensure that we are educated on what we are to be working on. And then also identifying some other boards and commissions that we can work with within the community, and kind of start up here. Does that sound good to everyone? I just would like that to be an agenda item for next time. Yes.
This is Commissioner Coviello. I agree with that agenda item and like it. And from my experience, I think we it is important to do our homework, as Commissioner Sellers had mentioned, and I look forward to doing that. But one of the things that you had mentioned was finding community partners, and I think there's a lot of obvious ones out there, and it may be a sub point or a follow-up to the agenda next time of almost mapping out those community partners, because I think it could get messy quickly, and it may be useful for us at a later time to understand under each pillar that Amber was, Commissioner Sellers was talking about, is there a relevant community partner there? But mainly what I'm looking for is just a little bit of structure to the task, and I think it's a worthy one. So that could be discussed later, but getting the big list makes sense first. Thank you.
Commissioner Dahl here, and I agree with what both Commissioner Barnett and Commissioner Coviello had said, and I'm just curious to kind of spin off what Commissioner Coviello had mentioned, but in terms of adding some structure and mapping out the community partners. Is there a current list of who partners with whom? I was just curious about that.
This is Assistant City Manager Casey Toomey. I can't think of a list of who partners with whom. I can think of a list that I've seen that the United Way has of kind of agencies that provide services out in the community. I don't know if that would be a good starting place or not, but that's what comes to my mind.
Commissioner Dahl, thank you.
This is Commissioner Coviello once more. Maybe a resource for other members of this board can be how I believe the City of Lawrence conducted in collaboration with other partners, community health plan for, I believe, Douglas County. And they had 4 big sections focused on food policy and insecurity, housing and things like that. And under each of their 4 sections, they had partners listed there. And even similar to the Unified Command and the recovery team in Lawrence, breaking it out our recovery into different sections and leaders within each of those sections. So there are some models out there, but I just wanted to bring that up as a resource.
This is Commissioner Stevens. I think that because Commissioner Barnett talked about last time that we need to have a layout for the different partnering bodies or whatever, that I would like to request that the city put that together, because it would be beneficial for not only our commission, but every commission that exists in Lawrence, as well as the community. So I think that just to remember that the things that we say in these meetings matter and they need to be followed through with. I think that holding the city accountable for that is important to me as we move forward, because otherwise I feel like we just keep coming here and asking questions that might get answered and might not get answered. And if we forget to follow up, then they never get answered. And that's, I think that that's disrespectful to the way that the world is moving right now and the way that our community needs actively. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Stevens. This is Katie Barnett, Commissioner. So is that okay? It seems like the staff already has kind of a roadmap or a place to start on that anyway. You know, like the Joint Command list for the CARES Act stuff, and it has all of the agencies underneath it. It seems like it would be pretty easy to put a list like that together. Can we expect that for the next meeting?
This is Assistant City Manager Casey Toomey. I can certainly provide the org chart for that Unified Command that has the 4 RSFs. They, again, are economic development, public health, housing and human services, and education. I can't promise you that it's a comprehensive list of all of the agencies in the community that do work in each one of those areas. There are some of them articulated. I think the last number I heard was there's something like 400 nonprofits in town, so it does not have 400 agencies listed. But I can certainly provide that. And I think if that's the extent of the roadmap, and I apologize for not going back and reading about the conversation that you all had, where you feel like you laid out the request that you are after, but we can certainly do that and take a shot at something.
This is Commissioner Stevens. I think that it's okay for it to be a working list, because that is a lot, you know. So for the next time that we meet, I think that I know that it will be extremely helpful as we can, I don't know, maybe I don't know if it's possible for people to create a Google Doc where we can all edit and add things as we learn about them or things like that. But I think that there would be, I think that we should have had this a long time ago. And so one of the problems that we have here in Lawrence is that people just don't know about the things that they have access to or who's working with who. But the people that are working with people know who's working with who. And so I would like for all the people to have equitable accessibility to that. Thank you.
Commissioner Barnett here. So thank you, Commissioner Stevens, and thank you, Casey. I really appreciate that. I think that will aid in facilitating further discussion. And I guess to kind of work off of what Commissioner Stevens said, we really last time discussed pretty heavily the idea of our communication with the public and getting out the word of what we do here on the commission. I know that there were several things discussed. I mean, they're all outlined in the minutes. Primarily, we wanted to have a more front and center presence on the city's website. I do appreciate so much Maureen's presentation and showing us that we are on the slider that's on the homepage. I love that. I've seen a handful of social media posts regarding the Human Relations Commission go out on Facebook at least over the last month. So thank you for that. I was really hoping to hear from the communications department or Tony on the really the restrictions that we have, and maybe Maria, you could help us answer questions as we roll them out here tonight. And again, I know everybody, it's almost 7 o'clock. I'm not trying to take up everyone's evening, but I do want to get to two other things that I have, and then whatever other commissioners have, and then of course public comment. What are our restrictions on a web page? So we discussed perhaps having a blog, having current events, having a book club, having a resource list. And then, you know, we asked for the very least to have Black Lives Matter on the page, you know, that are the Human Relations Commission's page. But that kind of speech is regulated because we're affiliated with the city. So I'm trying to understand, so we're not spinning our wheels here, on what are the parameters that we have as a city-sponsored commission, and what speech can we and can we not have on this web page? Because I see that as really the only source of communication that we can have that doesn't filter through the city's Facebook page and Twitter and stuff like that. So is that possible? Can you answer that, Maria?
I can definitely try. Maria Garcia, Assistant City Attorney. So I'll say very generally, anything that gets posted to the city's website by the city is considered what's called government speech. And that is actually not controlled by the First Amendment. The First Amendment, as you know, controls or addresses private speech that is regulated by the government. But when the government talks on its own, First Amendment issues don't apply. And so there's a lot of latitude on what can be posted. Basically, the government can say what it wants to. It can promote certain policies, positions on its own website. Where it becomes a little bit tricky is if you open a forum or you create a blog, as you said, or open a forum on social media, because the thing to consider there is once it's open to one side or one discussion, then it has to be opened to all viewpoints, even if they are very different from the one that is promoted by the city. And so I would say there is a difference between posting on the advisory board's website or the city website versus opening up a forum on a social media website. And the latter is where we would have to be more careful.
Commissioner Barnett here. I just have a real quick follow-up question. So when you say a blog, what I'm understanding is you are thinking that we would have like a blog with comments, and I think more what the commissioner, at least what I envisioned, was a commission approach to, or commission voice without comment. So am I to understand that we can essentially say a lot of what we discussed last time?
So yeah, with that clarification of what a blog is, if it's just the board speaking, then then the First Amendment principles, like I said, don't apply. It's when it's interactive and when you are allowing people to comment that creates that forum. I'm not sure if that clarifies your question. But where would that blog be? Would it be linked to your page on the city's website, or how do you envision that looking?
Yeah, Commissioner Barnett here. Yes, I just envision it being a part of the page or on the, archived blog post on the column. We have a lot of issues going on right now that, like Commissioner Seller said, this is so broad and we reach so many divisions and agencies and social issues right now. So there's a lot that we can provide to the people, and I'd like to do that. I just want to make sure before we discuss it what the parameters are. So, because I think that we had a few suggestions last time, and it was like, I don't know if we can say that. We'll have to look into that. So I appreciate your response. Thank you. And then
if you want to give, so you had a general question, but if you want to give some specific examples or resources that you would want posted, I just wanted to say staff is here to help, and we're eager to help make this happen for you, in the way that you want it to. So we'd recommend everything going through the communications department. Maureen provided a presentation on how that stuff gets posted. But as a general matter, I wanted to say we want to be a resource here and help make that happen for you.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Barnett. Thank you. So does anyone have any suggestions about how we roll something like that out? We discussed last time just posting resources, books, other websites. I'm trying to figure out the best way. We have a lot of really broad and complex issues and just topical discussions going on right now. And so without violating the open meetings discussion by emailing a bunch of lists and ideas, maybe we could just focus on one aspect of updating our webpage this evening. What would the commission like to see for that? Like a blog, book club, resource list, what?
This is Commissioner Stevens. I think that a resource list would be super helpful. Yeah.
Commissioner Dahl here. I agree with Commissioner Stevens. I think a resource list might be a good place to start.
This is Commissioner Stevens. I don't know. I don't think this is off topic, but I would also like a spot for us to affirm things like that Lawrence is a sanctuary city, and also Black Lives Matter. And I would like that to be an active part of, like, quote unquote, what we do as a commission, because we should be supporting the equality and affirmation and validation of all of our citizens, all of the people that live here. So.
Commissioner Barnett speaking. That sounds good. Let's do a resource list for a very specific topic. So what topic should we focus on resource-wise? Three topics really come to my mind right now is the inequity in rental property management and what's going on as it relates to COVID. I think one of the topical issues surrounding that is that as far as I remember, the governor's executive order preventing evictions expired on May 25th or 26th. And so is that a topic that we could narrow our focus on as far as a resource list? Or shall we focus on other issues involving discrimination complaints, if you're, I mean, I don't know if this is even on our page, but when you experience discrimination and you feel you have a claim, where to go to Beth over there at the prosecutor's office and other resources. I'm just trying to narrow our focus a little bit if I could get some help with what the rest of the commission thinks.
So, right, Katie, this is Commissioner Bloxham. When I was just hitting all the links that were involved in our agenda and went on to the website that was our page. When you click human relations on the city website, what it brings you to, and it gives a short blurb, but it also has the forms that so this is where I think we've talked about this in the past. We have these forms online that kind of highlight how people can file a complaint, but you can't fill the form out online. You have to call and make an appointment and go in. And so let's just talk about that right there, as far as getting public to talk about why do they need to make a phone call and fill out this form with the city staff? Why can't they just submit it online and have staff follow up? And let's talk about the little tiny things that pick apart our process on how real people operate in society. I don't have time to review the form, fill out the form, then call someone to fill out the form. All those things are, again, going back to what are we really doing here? And are we really hearing from the public? So just starting with that, I don't know how much can be changed, but I don't quite understand why somebody cannot submit that form and then have someone follow up. I know we've talked about this before.
This is Commissioner Stevens. Yeah, I think especially because of the pandemic that's going on, as well as not everybody's able to get off during work hours to meet with somebody specific, or the realities of how reporting influences, like having to report in person with somebody, influences whether people actually report, because you want to make sure you're heard and validated, and that doesn't always happen because everybody has biases. So I full-heartedly support that. I think that it's a travesty that we don't have that already online.
Commissioner Barnett here. I just was hoping that Beth Hafoka could speak to our process, and she does all the intake, and she could maybe explain a little bit better.
I'm Beth Hafoka. I'm one of the human relations investigators and the supervising city prosecutor. I think what I heard you saying, Commissioner Bloxham, was that there's no way for a community member to fill out a form online and have that be submitted. And my understanding, and we get online forms frequently, is that a person can actually go fill out the form online. That generates the intake form, relations email, which comes directly to my email. Review that form. We reach out to that person. We touch base with them. We do like to do and encourage in-person interviews, and that allows for, if the complaint is filed, that can be notarized. We have a notary in our office. We also have done telephone intake interviews. I just did a Zoom interview this past week. So we also accept complaints in person and over the phone. So I'm not sure maybe if that information isn't out there, but we do accept online intake forms. We do accept forms in person. And when we get those, we reach out to that person and talk to them and find out how they want to proceed. We conduct an interview with them, and then we proceed with the investigation.
Perfect. Then we need to change the website, because right now I'm reading it right now. Where to file a complaint. To file a complaint, the filing process may be started by coming in person to the Human Relations Division, the Lawrence Memorial Court offices, a One River Point office, or telephoning the Human Relations Division. That is the instruction on the website. Then it goes on to online complaint forms. For your convenience, you may also begin filing process. So can we just get this simple, because I could not figure it out. And I could not figure out how to even start this. So let's just simplify it by saying you don't even need, they can call, or you can call if you need more information. But right here, the first 2 steps are coming in or telephoning. And then they have the 3 online intake forms. So I wouldn't know that just filing those intake forms. I mean, I thought the first thing was to call someone, or when, or where. I don't know.
So would you like the first option to be submitted online form? I think that would be a relatively easy change to make. And like I said, we are getting online forms, so there are people doing that. But I think that we could easily revise that portion of the website so that the online form is the first option for people.
Yeah, I just think it would simplify things, because right now, I don't know if I have to call I don't know how to do it. And the second thing is, I have a question about, is once they do that online form and the intake has begun from their just filling out the form, are those things that are tracked as far as how many people you actually get to talk to after they've filed that online form?
We reach out to everyone that we get an online form from.
Okay.
So we attempt to contact them via phone, via email. However, so I can't, unless we have made several attempts and are unsuccessful, in which case we send a letter. We make contact with every person who submits an online form or who calls us, who comes in person. We don't, they all come to us, and we will reach out to every single person who does. Okay.
But usually you do. Usually you make contact. Because there's a difference between attempting to make, I get it. I mean, it's hard to get people back sometimes. But I'm wondering is that tracked from how many people file a complaint to actually the people that are in the next step, which is actually talking to you? Is that tracked at all?
Yeah, I mean, we have a record of those complaints that come in online. And we also track those that actually proceed to an investigation.
Right.
And then we save also that, contacts were attempted. I can't think of any online intake forms that we got that we weren't able to reach the person. Okay. Sometimes we'll get phone calls from people, and we get voice messages maybe that come after hours, and we're trying to reach out to that person, find that person after that, and we just can't get them. We can't get that person to respond to us. Maybe they found another resource, I don't know. But most of the time we're able to get in touch with that person and find out what's going on, find out what the issue is, and then either proceed with an investigation, or if it's not a discrimination allegation, it's something else, we can connect them with the resource where they need to be to help them.
Awesome. So, based on let's just talk about since COVID, because usually in your staff updates, we get those numbers of complaints and what's under investigation. And I think it could kind of help us go forward as far as what are you seeing? Where are the complaints? I know that has helped us before in the past. So what are those complaints being filed for right now? I mean, just to help us narrow our focus on what we need to be communicating to the community right now.
It's Elizabeth Hafoka. We have 2 open housing investigations right now. There's the only discrimination complaints we're currently investigating. One is national origin, the other is disability. It's not alleged that either of those have anything to do with COVID. Those are other issues. The allegations are refusal to rent. As far as COVID, I will tell you that I participated in a webinar earlier this month that was put on by the National Fair Housing Training Academy and HUD. And they spoke about sexual harassment cases because that is the current emphasis of HUD. And they wanted all the investigators across the country and agencies across the country that focus on fair housing to be aware that there may be an increase in discrimination complaints related to sexual harassment because of COVID and the financial difficulties that some people are experiencing. Particularly vulnerable populations may be subjected to quid pro quo situations with their landlord, hostile environment. And so I've spoken with the other investigator in my office where those situations may be something that we have to pay particular attention to. At this point, we haven't had any complaints come through for that. I'm not saying that that's not happening here. We just haven't received any allegations of that, but we are aware of some of the issues that are happening because of COVID, and we're ready to accept complaints, and if we have jurisdiction, conduct the investigation.
So this is Assistant City Manager Casey Toomey. If I may jump in, it sounds like we need to get back in, and maybe this was the tradition of the board, or maybe this is a new suggestion. I apologize for not knowing as the new liaison, but sounds like a regular update from our investigators, Elizabeth, would be a helpful agenda item. And maybe we could—
Commissioner Barnett here.
Forward.
Yeah, she gives us a staff update. You know, since these meetings are special meetings and monthly, whereas we used to meet quarterly, I don't know that one was prepared because this is a special meeting. But she does give us updates quarterly. So I don't think that we're missing out, but perhaps since we are meeting monthly, and because the volume is not too tremendous, staff could give us an update each meeting just briefly about the investigations ongoing and the types of claims that their office is getting. Would that be okay, Beth?
That would be great. I actually had prepared my case report, and so usually it happens at the beginning of the meeting, so I was ready to give you the update, and it just didn't ever come up. So I was ready to advise you. It just didn't happen today because of the special meeting, but I will give you an update on our investigations as frequent as you would like it. That is something that I'm happy to do.
Thank you. This is Assistant City Manager Casey Toomey again. My apologies for being the newbie, but I will make sure that continues to happen. Thank you, Beth, for doing that.
This is Commissioner Bloxham. I'm not going to beat this horse dead, but I really am actually right now, because I know it was also talked about in our previous meetings when we were talking about the origins of complaints. And I know you give those updates on our investigations, but I want to know if the complaints that are being filed, because you say the complaints will come in, and if it's not something that follows under our whatever we do, then you can push it out to other resources. And I think what I'm asking is there information that we can take as a board from those complaints that are being filed? Because we never have workplace complaints, and we never have accommodations complaints that have been investigated since I've been on for 6 years. I think there's maybe been one. So my first question is, are we not getting complaints because there is no discrimination in our city happening in those arenas? Or are we not getting are those complaints because we just don't know they're happening, and people don't know that it's not just a fair housing issue that we deal with. We also deal with accommodations. We also deal with workplace issues. Or are those complaints that are being filed not picked up because they don't fall under our realm of what we can actually do for those complaints? Are you following my question? Does that make sense at all? I mean, because if I'm sitting here, I'm like, we're cool. We do not have any complaints ever from workplaces or accommodations. So Lawrence must be a great place where no discrimination is happening there. Or are we just not asking the right questions and informing the public that they have those rights to file complaints in those arenas?
So I've been here since 2011, and I have done public accommodations complaints, and I have done employment complaints, and I've done housing complaints. Housing is probably the most common, but I know that there was a public accommodations case not that long ago that I believe made the local media stories. It involved an establishment here and a man that had a visual impairment, and a service animal that he was trying to take in was turned away. That case was successfully conciliated, and Maria Garcia and I provided training to that business, to those employees. So we have had public accommodations cases. We have had employment cases. I don't know the reason why the case numbers are low. I will tell you that sometimes we get a complaint and we're not able to investigate it because there's a conflict of interest, because there's an overlap sometimes with the prosecutor's office and the human relations complainants. So if there's a complainant that has a pending case, we're unable to, I can't prosecute that person and also be a neutral investigator for that person's complaint. And if there are witnesses that are involved or co-complainants, other aggrieved parties that also present that sort of conflict, those cases have to be waived to outside agencies. So that sometimes happens just because of the nature of where the Human Relations Office is within the city.
This is Commissioner Coviello. My next comment, I think, might relate a couple of things we've spoken about tonight. First off, thank you for giving a little bit of an update of the types of cases that you've received. But I think one of the frustrations that's been made abundantly clear is that I think we want to be involved, we want to help people, and we don't feel as though we're being utilized or communicating how we can help others. We learned earlier tonight the resources available to us through Maureen on how we can reach out to the city. We've expressed interest and know that we have the ability to change our website specifically to fulfill one of the core missions of this group, which is to field complaints and reduce discrimination in public housing, accommodation, employment spaces, and what have you. So I think an action would be to simply tweet out, to send out a Facebook message. Are you experiencing any of these things, or other channels that we might feel appropriate? And I think we're not it's I don't know how to phrase it. We don't want there to be these cases, but we know that there are a lot of potential cases out there that maybe aren't being addressed, and we want to address them. So that's an action item that I think we could accomplish in the interim, which is simply advertising more aggressively this option available to people.
This is Commissioner Blackman. Thank you, Commissioner Coviello, but I agree. What I'm wondering is, in your updates, and with all the reasons why that it's not picked up for investigation or not becoming a case, I, as a commissioner of this board, want to know I want to know what complaints is it possible that we even know what complaints are coming in, so we know, we get a feel, even if they don't hit investigation, or even if they don't hit a case, or wherever that goes. But I feel like we don't know what the public is, just like Commissioner Coviello was saying, we don't know what those complaints are, because unless they meet a certain criteria, they don't even get reported to us. And so I'm just wondering if that process can change so we can start really trying to hear from the public what they're encountering and provide some of that education, pull it off your resource list so that you can actually get some good cases coming through that you can actually do something with. Am I making sense? Can we get records of those complaints? We don't even have to know who does it. I just want to know what they're saying, because I know they're existing. I mean, I know it exists.
Yeah, so there's going to be a record of all the online forms that we have gotten. We save those. So I'd be happy to make a list for you, and that could be reviewed at some point. There's a list of cases, investigations that I've done since I've been here. That can be provided.
This is Commissioner Sellers. I have a couple of points I wanted to touch on. One, in regards to the complaints, real quickly, if you could share with me the quarterly reports that come from the Human Relations Office. What does that report entail? Can you briefly explain what that report, what does the report have in it?
So what I do is verbally tell the group, the commissioners and whoever's present from the public and the staff, how many investigations are ongoing, how many we've closed since the last meeting, the type, so it's either housing, employment, or public accommodations, and then the basis of the complaint, the protected class.
Okay, so it sounds like what we're wanting, and I don't want to speak for everyone, but it sounds like you're essentially giving a dashboard report of some sort that should outline to date, these are the complaints, this is how many were resolved, this is the outcome, this is the subgroup that they fell in, whether it's housing, disability, employment, so on and so forth. But that report's typically given verbally. It's not like an actual physical report that one can review that outlines, these are trends that we're seeing, or that actually gives us quantitative information about what you're sharing with us verbally, correct?
I believe that what I share verbally is recorded in the minutes, and then those are approved at the next meeting. So no, I don't have a quantitative report, but all the case report updates that I've given since 2011 have been recorded in the minutes. They're there in the minutes.
Okay. So at least while it's given verbally at the initial meeting, it then is reflected in the minutes. Okay. And then my second question is for Maureen, if she could at least shed some light. When you click on the Human Relations Commission tab on the main City of Lawrence page, it lands on the filing a complaint page. Is that the landing page for the Human Relations Department for the city?
So Human Relations falls under City Attorney's Office. But if you're talking about the commission itself, I believe in December of 2019 or late 2019, we moved all the commissions over to a platform called iCompass. So I believe the landing page for your commission specifically,
right
there.
But the reason why I ask is I'm understanding the rationale for Human Relations lands on filing a complaint, but for me, it seems like, I don't want to say it's punitive, but when we talk about not, individuals in the community not knowing the information about human relations, filing a complaint, what their rights are, things are so on and so forth, I would rather that landing page go to something like that than just filing a complaint. We want them to file a complaint if they feel like they have been wrong, but there's nothing here that shows any type of education and empowerment. It's a very punitive page, and rightly so. One needs to be empowered and encouraged to file a complaint, but they're not going to file a complaint if they don't know if they can file a complaint. And there's nothing on this page that speaks to that. And so I'm looking at other municipalities and I'm looking at their pages, and our page is very milquetoast compared to a lot of the other pages. There's nothing here that educates. There's nothing here that provides resources that we need to talk about. I'm thinking if we had a page that had that, and we have general counsel telling us that, in the midst of COVID and housing discrimination and housing complaints, there could be something along the line of sexual misconduct, that's a great way to highlight, do you know your rights as an individual for, we're seeing an uptick in sexual misconduct when it comes to renting, know that this is not correct. Know that, these are your rights, or be aware of if your landlord or someone is asking you this, this, and this, and have a link to that. So I'm not seeing that because we have a page that just says file a complaint, but I don't know to file a complaint if I'm not educated on what I'm filing a complaint about. So maybe tweaking that and what that could look like. And I don't know, that's a little bit of bothersome to me. Is I want us to be able to encourage those to file complaints, but if we're not educating them on what to file, then we're a hamster on a wheel and we're not serving any purpose.
So this is Assistant City Manager Casey Toomey again, and I want to thank the Commission for all of your conversation around this topic. I think Commissioner Sellers, I appreciate you referencing what other cities' pages look like. I think that that's something staff can take back and do some work on and look at some good examples of what other pages look like. I think that might also pull in your conversation about the resource list. There may be other good examples. I know I've seen some really good work that libraries across the country are doing in terms of resource lists. So if it pleases you all, then that would be what my suggestion would be, is to let staff go back and try to come up with some review of what else is out there to use as best practice and bring that back to you all. And then to go back to Commissioner Bluxom's conversation about, what I kind of heard her articulating was, if we use the number of complaints that get filed as our only indicator of success, we're missing out on some things. And so maybe that's another area where we can look at what are other indicators to know. One thing that comes to my mind is the city does a community survey to see if people are satisfied with city-provided services. Are there tools like surveys? Are there tools like outreach activities? I know the Human Relations Division used to have HUD funds for trinkets that they would, pins and pencils and rulers and those kinds of things that they would give out. Are there things like that we need to be, again, looking to best practices to do in order to be reaching out into the community? So maybe that's another action item for staff, is to go back and do a little homework to bring back to you all. Does that sound like something you would be interested in?
Commissioner Barnett here, yes, that absolutely would be something we are interested in, really revamping our page to be a resource like we have been talking about. And then, maybe we can focus on different aspects of what that looks like, the nuance to it, with regard to book club, blog, the things that we talked about last time. That sounds great. So you will have that for our August meeting.
We can have something, a working, how did Commissioner Stevens say, a working list? We could have a working document, sure.
Yeah, Chairman Barnett, this is Scott Wagner, legal analyst. That was kind of our goal for the August meeting. Porter could not be here tonight. He's on vacation. So that was kind of our plan to share with you for the August meeting, to review our web pages. And as Maureen mentioned, we're kind of in a transition phase between iCompass and how information is displayed to the public with the iCompass format and the rest of the city's web presence. That includes the city attorney pages and the Human Relations Commission pages. So Porter, I think, was going to walk us through that, was going to consolidate some of our information that we had previously had on the city's Human Relations page to the iCompass portal and share with you how that looked. So I think we can provide a good update in August, enhance that web presence and show you what it looks like and what it can be, along with perhaps a list of best practices from other cities as well.
Commissioner Barnett speaking. That sounds great. Thank you. I think the biggest thing the reason we all decided in favor of having these monthly meetings is because these are really dynamic, fast-moving issues and that reach our commission. And so I really don't want to delay as much as the city can. I do realize that you have a lot of other things going on and in trying to keep our community safe. But this is really, I think if you feel like it is something that you can achieve by the August meeting, I would greatly appreciate it, because then if you think about the action that the commission would need to take, and then the rollout of that page, we're looking like September or October. And again, we just would like to recognize that these issues are swift, and we want to have swift responses, and we want to be, as I think Commissioner Bluxham said last time, really proactive instead of reactive. So thank you for the time that you in advance for the time you're going to put into it. I greatly appreciate it. So just moving on, I want to do if there's any other commissioner items, and then also for public comment. I did have two things, and I think this is the nice natural progression from the website discussion. You know, we have these current events that are happening, whether it's the White House rolling back on HUD rules and regulations, or it's another police shooting, or whatever is happening. It all is happening fast, and I want us to be responsive to it. And I don't know the correct, or I don't know what the appropriate forum is to address these issues, but I have two that I think really impact what we do. And the first thing, well, they're both HUD rollbacks from the administration. One being the affirmatively furthering fair housing rollback, which it actually has some implications to what the city, if I understand correctly, I haven't studied the issue too in-depthly, but I did see that they rolled back the regulations that require cities to fill out this, I believe it's a 19-point question on how they are continuing to have fair housing in their community. It's more of like a self-reported thing, and so for each city. So they rolled back that regulation, and I'm wondering if we can get a statement or comment. I'd like to know from our Affordable Housing Advisory Board if this changes anything that they are doing, reporting-wise or initiative-wise. If that's something that we could find out from them, because I'd like to have a statement on our webpage, again, that says, although the Trump administration rolled this back, it does not impact how the city of Lawrence functions, and, you know, whatever the statement may be. I just want to help reassure our community that these things may be going on and it's really scary, but what is our community doing to address it, or do things in Lawrence remain unchanged? And I don't know if that's appropriate, but I'd like to see something like that. I'd like to hear from the Affordable Housing Advisory Board that that doesn't change anything. Second part to that is the equal access rule, which is, you know, homeless shelters allowing transgendered people to identify with the gender they identify with, you know, because the Trump administration said that a human, sorry, I deal with animal shelters, a human homeless shelter could turn away someone and request biological proof of their sex. And I know that our homeless shelters are relatively friendly. And so I want to make sure, I'd like to know that even though this happened, this equal access rule has been rolled back, and there's a horrific rule that came with it from the federal government, that our homeless shelters are going to continue to allow people in. And I know that perhaps we need a quick phone call to each of the shelters to ask them and get reassurance that they're not going to roll back how they admit people or allow people to have access to the shelter, and that this rule again remains unchanged for the people of Lawrence. So could we discuss that at all tonight, just quickly, what that looks like? And if that's something that the commission wants to endeavor to work on in between this meeting and the August meeting?
This is Commissioner Coviello. I wanted to bring up, I don't know if we need to take any official action, but I do know that Thea Perry is the chairperson of the board for Lawrence Community Shelter. I personally am happy to talk to her. I don't know if, or can introduce you, and you can ask these questions on behalf of the commission. I don't know if that is sufficient for what you're looking for right now, but wanted to bring that up.
This is Commissioner Stevens. I think that we should invite Thea to speak to at the next commission meeting.
As Commissioner Coviello, Thea, or their current executive director, I think both would be great. I don't know what steps need to be taken in order to do that, but I think it would be a great next step.
This is Scott Wagner, a legal analyst. I would say we can have staff reports on those two topics easily at the next meeting.
This is Assistant City Manager Casey Toomey. I'm happy to call Renee Kuhl, the Executive Director of Lawrence Community Shelter, and see if somebody would be available to make a presentation as well. And Chairman Barnett, the other shelter that when you said reach out to both shelters, the other was Family Promise, or what other shelter was in your mind when you said the both shelters?
Commissioner Barnett here. Yes, and there are other nonprofits that work on sheltering the human population, and honestly, I'll have to tell you, I'm not aware of an exhaustive list. I just know the Lawrence Community Shelter. I know Family Promise, and I don't know of any others. Okay. But I just want to I want to have a comprehensive list. I don't want a statement that says things remain unchanged for the residents of Lawrence if in fact that's not true. I don't know necessarily if we need a presentation or just a brief statement. Addressing these two rule changes is really all I was looking for. So if we could, Commissioner Coviello, if you could talk to Ms. Perry about that and see if she could either be present. I think I like that. I would like for her to come to the next meeting and that could be an agenda item as we narrow our focus for right now for the August meeting, maybe to be housing generally, eviction issues, and really fair housing. I think that could be a focus for our August meeting if everyone is kind of in agreement.
Commissioner Coviello, just briefly, I'm happy to do that, but I think it would be also great taking up the offer that Casey brought up, which is to call the current executive director. She deals with the day-to-day and may be appropriate. So Casey, if would appreciate if you would do that.
Yep.
Thank you in advance. Sorry for cutting off anyone else.
You good. Commissioner Stevens, they can both come. We're in Zoom. It's fine. We're in Zoom meeting.
Commissioner Bloxham, can we please include the Willow Domestic Violence Shelter as well, please? And I don't have any contacts there. I'm just saying they house people, and it would be interesting to see what they have to say about this as well.
This is Assistant City Manager Casey Toomey. I have contacts at the Willow as well. I guess I'm wondering if maybe a staff report isn't a good idea, to give staff a chance to think of who all you might want to hear from. I'm afraid if we try to come up with the list here tonight, we might miss somebody. Alternatively, I guess I would say maybe give some additional conversation about the presentation. I wrote down focus on housing and eviction, but as the Lawrence Housing Authority, somebody you're interested in, the Landlord Association, I mean, there's lots of interested stakeholders there. So those would be areas I would need additional direction from you all in, I guess.
Commissioner Bloxham here, and I am going to open up another can of worms. Do minors fall under our public accommodations? Would that, because I know it's a huge issue for the county I work in right now through the school system there, about this issue about transgendered youth not being able to be housed places, and there's little underground railroads opening up. I mean, I don't know how far we want to bridge this, and I don't know if youth are covered under that, or if you under accommodations where you have to be an adult. I don't know that answer, but that'd be something also that I would be interested in hearing as well.
Commissioner Barnett here. I don't know the answer to your question. I'm sure that Ms. Garcia knows or could find out the answer to your question. Perhaps we do focus on the admission process. We all know that there's going to be kicking off a housing crisis going on. So, asking what we can do as a commission, receiving a presentation from the shelters. I think I'd like to maybe focus on this HUD section just for the next meeting as far as presentations go. Just again, making sure that we are providing equal access to everyone, and that the gosh, I guess I would just say a staff report, Casey, would be great on a survey from all of those agencies and how they relate to these two HUD rule changes. And then receiving a presentation from the Lawrence Community Shelter only at our August meeting. I mean, this is probably the latest meeting we've ever had in my time of being the chair, and so I don't want to have the same thing happen next time. But if we could just have a presentation, if they would be willing and available from the Lawrence Community Shelter, that would be great. And then perhaps that could kick off a conversation as to how we can also discuss hearing from other stakeholders, like you said. And Commissioner Bloxham, I think you bring up a really great point. The Willow Domestic Violence Center as well. So is that clear?
Assistant City Manager Casey Toomey, you mentioned a survey asking agencies on the impact of those two specific items. We can certainly reach out to the agencies that come to my mind. I'm sorry if I'm overcomplicating it, but my concern is that we're going to leave folks out that you will wish that we had contacted. So maybe a suggestion would be, if there are other agencies that come to anybody's mind, if you want to reach out to me individually so we don't have any KOMA violations, but if you want to give me a ring on the phone or an email of an agency that comes to your mind, just so we can make sure that we're reaching out to a good cross-section of agencies that are out there.
Commissioner Barnett here, that sounds great. So that was all that I had for commission items. Who else has items they would like to discuss before we move on to public comment? Does everybody want to go eat dinner, take a bathroom break? Okay, so if I'm not seeing any further commission items for discussion, And do we have anyone wishing to provide us with public comment?
Chairman Barnett, Scott Wagner, City Attorney's Office. There is no one in the Zoom chat room, and there's no one physically present here in the commission chambers.
Commissioner Barnett here. That sounds okay by me. So if there is no further discussion, let's get out of here. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Chairman, sorry to interrupt. We do need to schedule our future meetings. That was one of the action items that we need to pin down.
So do you want to, Scott, can you explain that? What's going on with the future meetings? I think we're going to try and have them regularly on a specific, the third Thursday of each month, because it's getting kind of hectic scheduling these Zoom meetings because of the technology required in commission chambers. Is that correct?
Scott Wagner, City Attorney's Office. Yes, that's correct. With the current COVID situation and the requirement that our commission has kind of mandated of all boards and commissions to make sure that these meetings are open to the public and transmitted to the public. For right now, we need to hold them in the commission chambers, and the city has 20 some boards and commissions that are fighting for this space. So as we looked at our schedule, this board has historically met on the third Thursday. Our next quarterly regularly scheduled meeting was scheduled for Thursday, August 20th. That will work for next month. And since we had decided to meet monthly, we looked at the demand for this space, and we think that going forward for the rest of the year, a third Thursday meeting will work for this commission for the remainder of the year. We may have to tweak the meeting start time because there is another board that will occasionally meet on the third Thursday, but definitely for August 20th, third Thursday at 5:30, as we had it scheduled already, will work.
Commissioner Barnett here. Okay, that sounds great. So do we need to, if we say the third Thursday, is that sufficient enough for a motion to schedule the rest of the meetings? The third Thursday of every month until the third Thursday of December of 2020. Yes. Okay, do I have a motion for that?
Commissioner Stevens' motion.
Commissioner Stevens, is that sorry, this is Commissioner Barnett. Is that a motion for having the meetings on the third Thursday of each month until the end of the year?
Yep, sorry about that. That's what I do motion. I cut myself off.
Do I have a second?
Commissioner Bloxham, my second.
I'll call the roll. Commissioner Dahl.
Commissioner Dahl here, yes, agree.
Commissioner Bloxham.
Yes.
Commissioner Coviello.
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens.
Yes.
Commissioner Sellers.
Yes.
Okay. I think we lost two commissioners in this exhaustive meeting, but I think that's enough. Yeah, that's enough. The motion carries. We'll have the meetings on the third Thursday of every month leading up to the end of the year. Okay. Anything else, staff?
This is Assistant City Manager Casey Toomey. I can't even say my name at this point. No, nothing else from staff.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Commissioner Bloxham, motion to adjourn the meeting.
Commissioner Stevens, second.
I'll call the roll. Commissioner Dahl. Commissioner Dahl.
Yes.
Commissioner Bloxham.
Yes.
Commissioner Coviello.
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens.
Yes.
Commissioner Sellers.
Yes.
Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you all so much for this journey this evening, and I will see you in August. Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Night.